Hi, my name's John and welcome back to the channel. So, you've nabbed yourself an H90. You're extremely excited, but a bit overwhelmed. Well, I know how you feel. If you haven't seen my previous video, take a look here. This is me being a bit confused for the first couple of hours with the H90. It is not straightforward. Well, I've now read the manual, all 204 pages of it. And today we are going to decode some of the basics of the pedal and get you from a complete beginner to someone who knows their way around and can make their own fantastic sounds with this pedal. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of the basics and you'll know your way around the pedal and be able to start making your own sounds and experiment and create some fantastic, unique sounds that are for you. So here we are, we have the H9 set up. We have a simple ARP going on in the background. We are on clean ambient, which is program 1. So the first thing that you need to try and understand with the H90 is the terminology, which is not particularly helpful. So there's a number of layers. So if you turn the select button, you scroll through from 1 up to 99. This is called a list. There's 99 programs in a list. So each one of these, clean ambient, bedroom vibes, T-drive, delay, is a program. And a program is a collection of 2 effects. And I guess that is the nub of the H90. You can have 2 effects for 1 signal. So at the moment I have a stereo signal coming in and a stereo signal coming back out. And I have it just being applied to the ARP. So this button here turns the effects on and off. So that has a slight effect on it, and that is just the try signal. So in Eventide language, each effect type is called an algorithm. So I would call that a delay or a reverb or a chorus or a flanger. Eventide call that an algorithm. Now on the H90, there are 62 effect algorithms, 10 of which are completely new and haven't been on any previous Eventide pedal. It includes all 52 effects from the H9 Max. So when you look at the display, when it says a digital delay, that digital delay is what Eventide call an effect or an algorithm. And the SB 2016 reverb is another type of effect. This is one of the new ones, in fact. So you have a program which is a collection of these 2 effects. And then within each effect, imagine if you have a separate pedal, a separate guitar pedal that is a digital delay. It'll have loads of knobs, it'll have input gain, it'll have feedback, it'll have modulation, might have output gain, might have time delay, or will have time delay. When you tweak all of those knobs and then save that, you can save that those knob positions as a preset, which is the button here. So within each effect algorithm, you have a preset that you can save. So obviously, a digital delay, you can have 5, 10, 20 different varieties of that digital delay, and each one of those is a preset. When you are changing the virtual knobs on each effect, each one of those is a parameter. And so that is the terminology. So you have an effect algorithm, you tweak the parameters, you save that as a preset, and then you allocate it to either A or B. And then when you save that, that's a program. It is much more confusing than it needs to be. So what I want to do in this video is take you from somebody who loads this up and goes through the onboard factory presets, or programs in fact, sorry, and just plays with them, to someone who really understands this pedal and can make their own presets with their own set of parameters and their own programs. So let's get into it. So the first thing we need to do is to get out of the Eventide user list 1, which is the set of 99 programs that you scroll through when you first get the box. So if you press both of these buttons on the left together, well, you get to the main menu, it's gone straight into global. This is the system menu. If you press this button on the left, you go into the global menu, and you see on the left, it says playlist user 1. User 1 is that list of 99 that it comes with. If you scroll to user 2, and then get out of there, in fact, we have gone straight to 01 JK delay verb. Now this is what I want to set up from the beginning with you. This is something that I've come up with and it is in my list. If I just bypass that for now, if you then scroll through, you'll see that the rest of the 99 in this user list 2 are completely blank. So let's start with a blank program, number 2. So at the moment, we only have the dry signal. So we have A is just a through and B is just a through. So the signal is just coming straight through. So the first thing we want to do is to select an algorithm, which we want an effect. So I'm going to recreate, or at least recreate something similar to the one we did before, that I did earlier, which is a delay going into a reverb, a fairly common combination that I'm sure most people will want to set up. So if you press presets here, you can then search for a starting point. So you can search, I'm going to leave this on searching through all of them. If you scroll through the second knob here, you'll go through all the different types of algorithm. So I want a delay, and if there's a bucket delay, band delay, digital delay, duck delay, filter pong, headspace, so there's lots and lots and lots. Let's go with a tape echo and see what that sounds like. So if we then, that is our search criteria. If we then use the select button on the left to, actually we have in fact got this on the B algorithm. So if I go back to A, and do the same again, because I want the delay first before we go into the reverb, and then we then scroll through. Because we have this active, you'll be able to hear the effect straight away. If you then use the select button on the left to scroll through, it will preview each effect, and because it's a tape echo, you'll get pitch distortion as you're changing the time of each one. So I quite like that. Let's go with that. So we will select that by pressing the select. So it is still, our program number 2 is still called init program. It has a tape echo, and on the B it says tape echo, but it is grayed out because it is bypassed at the moment. If we go into presets and we press it again, we go on to B. Oh, I need to make it active. Yes, there we go. If I want to bypass the echo, and so we're just going to try and find ourselves a reverb, which we like here. So if we scroll through the type again and get to reverb, and let's do all, and then as we scroll through, now tremolo reverb, a bit shaky, sounds like that's going to go quite well with tape echo, so we'll go with that. Right, now if I turn on tape echo again, so that is what our preset currently sounds like. So as it is, you have now created a program which does not exist in the box that it came with. We are just using 2 presets out of the box at the moment, but we have a program that is totally unique. So the next thing to do would be to save it. So if you hold the program button, we want to save it in user 2 list, which is what we're in, and number 2, which is what we're in. If we press the perform button, we will save it, and we can then press these buttons in, delete what's there. We'll call it del verb. So we have saved our program number 2 as del verb. We have a tape echo going into tremolo verb, but we can do more than that. So if you recall from my first video, these 3 buttons can be programmed, and at the moment they are just standard. They're in gain, out gain, tails. So, and if you press on them and click, page 2 is B in gain, out gain, tails. So not particularly interesting. So what we want to do is change these to something a bit more interesting that we can then adjust. So if you click in, we'll get onto the first screen here, and then hold it in, you get to this screen. Now this screen lists all the things that these 3 knobs can control. So if I take the one on the left to start with, at the moment you see it's selected in gain. If we scroll down, we'll get something which we might find a bit more interesting. So maybe the wet mix for this one. I want to keep page 1 all on about A. So you can see each of these can do P, which is the program level. So we can do the program level mix. And if you scroll down, we can do the A. I think we might need out gain to make it a bit louder, and then maybe we'll have some saturation. I want to be on the first page, which is wet mix, out gain, and saturation. So I had done it correctly, actually. If we want to change the second page now. The second page, the square is on the right, and these I want to affect the reverb. So potentially we want the mix. Potentially we want the decay. And maybe the modulation depth. We can take the reverb off. Right up. Actually, so now we can take the reverb right up. We can make it a short decay. We can make it more and more stereo. So we can set a basic level. A little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay. So we have the tape echo and we have the reverb on top of it. And that's the dry signal. So at this stage we have our basic program, tape echo going into reverb. We've set up our 3 buttons that we can change this quite quickly, but we can go deeper and actually set up our standard sound a little bit more deeply. If we press the parameters button here, this takes us into a deeper set. So this one press has taken us to the B tremolo. If I press it again, it takes us to P, then to A. So if we go to, this is the program settings. So I'm thinking that overall, I'd like this to be a bit more of an effect. So I'm going to turn up the whole program's output. And if we go into A, we can then, this signal here, by the way, means that this is tempo synced to the original input. We can change the wet mix, we can change the A delay, and because it's tempo synced, it will change. It'll change within a certain division of the tempo. And if you see this line here, we have 5 pages of effects that we can change. So we can change the feedback, the wow and flutter. We might want to take this down. I'll tell you why in a second. Filter. So the filter, this seems to filter out the highs. I want the highs in there because there isn't much low information. Okay, that's sounding pretty good. If we then go to press this parameters button again, we get to the, again, 5 pages of parameters that we can affect. Pre-delay, speed, stereo depth, manual modulation, low levels, we're taking out the lows. Also taking out the highs. We might want to boost that for this kind of sound. Maybe we want to boost tremolo as well. Okay, so I quite like where we are now. So if I get out of this button, I think any of these should get me out. Yes, so we're back. So then this is our program that we have created. If we press this button here, this is the dry sound. Now if we just save this before we go any further, so hold the program button in again and just press the perform button, and we will save that. So this is now locked in. And because we have set these quick knobs here, we can very quickly change, take out the highs, going to make it much more of a tremolo. So very quickly we've created a sound that this box did not come with. And I think that is a good place to stop. We have gone from understanding how we can create our own list of programs, we can set presets for A and for B, we can change the parameters for A and for B, and we can set some quick knobs here to change them on the fly from the saved version. And you'll note, because I've changed these, there's an asterisk here in the program, which means that the current setting is not what's saved. So if we play this, if I go to the delay and verb that I created earlier, which is different, which is quite nice, and then back, this then loads in the saved version, which is slightly different to the version we were playing with before. Still very nice. Okay, so the next stage is to take this, and what you can then create is snapshots of each program that you can then quickly change between, so that while you're either performing live or if you're recording an instrument live in your DAW, you can maybe have an effect for the verse or the intro, you can have an effect for the drop, and you can also have the same effect but different parameters, maybe slightly more extreme, for the breakdown. So if that sounds good, I'll see you in the next video. Well, hopefully you're not feeling like a complete beginner on the H90 now. You know your way around, you can make your own presets and programs, so no longer a beginner. If this video is slightly too complicated, then feel free to take a look at my previous video on the H90, where I am an absolute beginner, having not even read the manual. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to stick around and catch my next video, where we take an even deeper dive on the H90 and take you from competent to an expert. See you then. Do you use your H90 pedal just for delay and reverb? Are you still sticking with the factory presets? Within this compact box lies a universe of sound waiting to be harnessed. Join me as I take you on a journey through the 3 essential levels of H90 expertise. From the basics of preset exploration, through some of the wild modulation effects, and up to the intricate soundscapes you can create with insert effects and snapshots. We're here to redefine your sound boundaries. Are you ready to elevate your H90 game? Okay then, let's dive in. So the 3 levels of H90, at least the 3 levels that I think. So level 1 is taking the programs that they have given us and making them different, making them how we want to, at least exploring it in a way that makes it simple, but coming up with something which isn't straight out of the box. Program 12 here, called Twisted Echo. This is exactly as it sounds when you get the H90. I mean, it sounds pretty good to me. Okay, but how can we explore these effects more? So we have 2 algorithms. We have a tape echo on A and a reverb on B. So if I press this button twice to bypass B, then we only have the tape echo. And that's what it sounds straight out of the box. But what if we wanted to see what kind of effects we can get from tape echo? Well, if we press presets, if we press the presets button and make sure that A is selected tape echo, it'll tell us that at the moment we're on classic slap. Now that is the preset within the algorithm that is being used at the moment. And initially, when I like to explore anything new, what I will do is take what they give us and see what else we've got. So underneath, we can search. And if I select the search down, if I don't even need to say that the type is delay, but if I select the algorithm to be tape echo, it's one of the newer algorithms, and then use the select button, we can scroll through other presets. So now this combination of tape echo and reverb, if I turn the reverb back on, oh, we need to get out of here. This version of Twisted Echo is not the one that the box comes with. So let's go through and do that a few more times to see what else we can do. So if we go into our presets, make sure that the A tape echo is selected and that we are, by changing the 3rd quick knob here, you can select what kind of algorithm. And if you go to, it's alphabetical. So if you go to T for tape echo, and then to classic slap is what it was on to start with. echo is this. And because it's tape echo, every time you change and the time is different, you get the fluctuations in pitch. Okay, I like that. Let's stick with that. If we then do the same with the reverb, if we press the presets button again, it's grayed out because I've bypassed it. So now it's not bypassed. We can then bypass the tape echo. And so we are now looking at the presets for the dual verb algorithm. So you see underneath it says algorithm dual verb, again alphabetical, so we can go through all of them. But if I select dual verb, then scroll using the select button, you'll be able to see the kind of presets that the box comes with, but are not in this particular setup. Echo verbs, empty streets, space gap, a little bit of a delay and reverb, then back to dual verb. So there we've gone through all of them. So I thought empty streets sounded good. Yeah, so if we then go back, so we now have an algorithm, a program, Twisted Echo it's called, which is not the Twisted Echo that it came with. Now if I save it, I will overwrite it here. Now why don't we save that? If you hold down Programs, and I change to User 2, which is my list of programs, and we go to the next clean one, which is 5, and press Save Program, and we will call it Twisted Echo JK. My initials, so that I know that this is the one that I have done. Save program. So when you do save it, bear in mind it does save over the factory preset that it comes with. Now you haven't actually changed any of the algorithms or any of the underlying presets or parameters, so you can always change it back, but just bear that in mind. Now if I go hold these two buttons here, you go to the system menu, and in global I can change the playlist to User 2. Oh, it's changed to a different version, which is another effect that I made. But you'll see that 5 is the one we've saved. So we saved it to our own playlist. And that, for me, is level 1. You're taking what's in the box and you're changing it and making it something that you like. And remember, once we've got this, we can then mess with the parameters. We can mess with these knobs here, which are the pre-selected parameters, and change it even more. And there are 6 of them we have easy access to. And if you haven't seen my previous video on Snapshots, you can take it even further and have 3 different versions of this particular program. I'll link the video up above. So level 2, in my mind, on the H90 is where you take a completely initialized program and create something completely from scratch, something that doesn't exist on the unit at all. And this is what I've done. So I'm now on 6 in list 2, which you can access through the global menu, and it's a completely initialized program. So this is bypassed, this is active, nothing happens. So let us mute algorithm B, and we'll choose something for algorithm A. Let's see what's there. And by making something completely our own, I am going to start with a preset or a type of effect that I like and then tweak it to my liking. So it's not going to exist on the box to start with. So if we go through presets, and you can do a search. So to start with, you can search on type. If I go back to, this is in alphabetical order. So there's obviously all, a delay, distortion, an EQ, a looper, modulation, multi, pitch, reverb, synth, utility. So there's a lot of different options. I'm going to try and make this one slightly more wild than the other ones that I've created, which are basically some sort of delay, chorus, reverb, things that are very usable. So if we keep it on pitch, let's see what we've got here. And as I'm scrolling through it, the the preset is immediately active. In fact, this might be quite a long list, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to polyphony, which is one of the new algorithms on this box, and see what this has got to offer us. Okay, I like the sound of that. Let's select that. And let's select something for, before we go in and tweak that one, let's select a basic preset for B that we like as well. Go into presets again, but make sure that we're on B, and we will bypass A and turn B on. Let's maybe have some sort of distortion perhaps. I know that Weed Whacker is a new one, so let's see what this sounds like as well. See, that sounds good. It's not too crazy, but I think we can drive that quite hard. So let's leave that there, and we will turn polyphony back on. And we can also at this stage see which way round it sounds better. So if you press the routing button and you press the left-hand button, it swaps them. So we have distortion first and then polyphony. We even have parallel, so it's going into each one. I think series sounds better. I think it sounds better if we add the distortion, the extra harmonics after the polyphony. So let's leave it like that. And then let's go into each preset and see the kind of parameters that we can change. So again, I'm going to mute B. I'm going to parameters of, this is P parameters. If you press it again, you get into A. So we've got mix, we've got levels, Shift A, what's that? Oh, I think this is the notes. Major, second, minor. Okay, so this sign here means it's tempo synced, and to go in and out of that, you press these two buttons on the right together. So you see it's gone, and these are in milliseconds or seconds. And then when you turn it into tempo sync, you can do it. I'm trying to make this one slightly more extreme than things that I've done before. Okay, let's leave it like that. That sounds kind of nuts. Okay, and then if I want to do the same and look at the overdrive settings, because this is a distortion, got to be a little bit careful about gain staging here. So you want to make sure that it's not massively louder than the input signal. Okay, let's leave it like that. We might maybe a little bit more. Okay, thank God I can bypass it now. So for me, level 2 is about creating your own level of craziness and allocating them to your own list. So I've done that here at the moment. There are 6, but if you go into bank mode here, by holding down the select button, we can then see that we have quick access to cry verb, twisted echo. Cry verb I did in a previous video, which I will link down below. Twisted echo and the current crazy one. And once you're in a bank, I mean, this is bypassed, but if we use these pedals, we can very quickly switch between them. So we have the same input signal. This is quite a nice subtle kind of stereo widening. So this is quite nice. It's quite a subtle stereo widening crystal reverb. We go into the, so you can see you could use these in different parts of the same song because you've got the same signal going in. And obviously within each one, you've still got the ability to change your quick knobs. So we can completely change how each one sounds within the bank. Go straight back. As soon as you press these, it just switches over. Some of the, you can change whether you get the tails from one feeding into the other, which is nice, and then you can go quickly to the craziness. Which you could see maybe you use and then filter out later and use as a sort of build up when you're going into the part of the so if you press the button straight away, it immediately switches. If you press it again, it bypasses it. If I then press one of the other ones, which is not bypassed, the effect goes straight in. But you get the tails to the old one, which I think is quite cool actually. And you can just talk about creating variations just by... Okay, so the JK Crazy still sounds crazy. I'm not sure that's usable, but the other two are nice. Okay, so this is level 3 on the H90. You'll see I have a friend with me, a Boss Distortion DS1 pedal. And this is plugged into the inputs and outputs number 3 on the back. So we have our same slightly annoying melody in the background for comparison. And if I turn on this new program that I've just created, JK Phase, which has a hot saws and a phaser, it sounds like this. Which sounds quite nice. At the moment, this pedal is not on. It's not in the signal chain at all. So, but if you want to see what that sounds like on its own, this is where the power of the multiple inputs and the routing really comes into it. So if I turn it on, but then actually bypass each of the algorithms by pressing A twice and B twice, and we go into routing, you'll see that the signal's coming in, it's going into the hot source effect here, and then the phaser, and then out, but they're both grayed out at the moment. This is set up as insert 1, and insert 1 is off. If I turn it on, a little 1 appears on the signal path, and we're going into the pedal and out, and not through the H90's effects at all. And this is what this pedal sounds like. You can affect the level of distortion, you can affect the tone, more high harmonics or more low harmonics. I keep it both these at 12 o'clock for now. And what you can do with this routing pedal is, if I just show you by turning the middle knob here, you can change the position of where it is. So in this position, the signal will be going through this pedal and in parallel through the 2 algorithms here. And if I turn it again, it then goes after the first effect, but before the second effect, or at the end of the chain. So let's start with it at the start of the chain and turn on our effects. And I can turn it on and off here. You'll see how different it sounds when we move it around the signal chain. So that is this pedal and the H90 in parallel. This is between the two, which I think sounds pretty amazing actually. Really distort the signal before it goes into the phaser. And then at the end of the chain, where it adds a bit of sort of guitar fuzz. And this would probably need to be a bit more subtle, so if I turn down distortion, yeah, it just kind of destroys the signal a bit. Not very subtle pedal, this particular one. But we can do more than this. We can then move the H90 into parallel. So if I turn the insert off for a second, there you go, pressing it turns it off. If I make this parallel, okay, so we're now going into the hot source and the phaser in parallel, so you're getting both of them. And goes from this. I quite like that, to be honest. This particular one probably sounds better in parallel. And then if we play with where the insert goes, the distortion, we have many, many more options. And this is where it gets really creative. And so if I put it at the start of the signal chain, it then splits and goes to both effects. And I turn it on. Nice, a kind of subtle effect, nice. But we keep going, we can put it just before the algorithm on the A side, which in this case is called hot source. So again, that's quite subtle because we're still getting the phaser on the input signal. And that is just before the phaser. Again, I think that sounds pretty good. So we're distorting it. May have to play with the gain levels as we're doing this. We keep going. Now we have all three in parallel, which is also quite cool, I think. So we have three effects going on to the same signal. So we go from this to this. That's when this pedal starts to become really cool. So many different effects. We can keep going. We can put it after the top, the A side. Again, destroys it a little bit. It's actually better going after the phaser. What about a low? Distort the bass a bit more. I think that sounds pretty good, to be honest. And the final one's at the end of the chain. I think this will probably destroy it a bit too much again. Yeah. Maybe. Well, it's certainly an effect. I think I prefer it there, to be honest. And then if you press one of these buttons, you get back out, and we are from this to this in an instant. And that's what I would call level 3 on the H90, where you're using the effects themselves, you're creating a combination that doesn't exist out of the box, you're adding your own effects into the signal chain and playing around with it. And of course, remember, I've only got one here. You can have another external pedal, and so you'd have 4 to play with, and so you could have a fantastic combination of effects that would really change a very simple input sound to something really quite interesting.
Well, hopefully that's given you a good overview of what you can achieve with the H90, from taking the basics as a beginner, really making those sounds into something that you really own, then maybe setting up some snapshots, some banks, some crazy effects, and ultimately adding external pedals as well, and then changing the routing, maybe even on the fly as you're recording. It's a really amazingly powerful instrument. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time. Whenever we start to get to know a new instrument, we often fall into the trap of only scratching the surface of what it can do. We learn the basics, we get familiar with those functions, but we rarely go further. The difference between a novice and an expert isn't just about hours of practice, it's also about depth of understanding. Today I'm going to reveal the hidden superpower of the H90. It's called Snapshots, and it lets you change your sound at the press of a button. If that sounds good to you, let's get into it.
So I've set the H90 up as in my previous videos. We have a stereo coming in from Ableton and a stereo signal going out. At the moment we're bypassed. Now this is a program that I've created. It's in my own list, use list 2, number 4, JK Cryverb. I've got some crystals on A going into a filter pong, and it sounds like this. And I have deliberately made it relatively subtle to start with. I have set up the quick knobs here so we can make it more extreme if we want. It's still got a nice, subtle, usable preset rather than something totally extreme. So if I take it back to the sort of, this is my standard, what I sort of want it to sound like initially. Bypassed, and on. And if you want to know how you can set up your own programs on the H90, look at my previous video on that subject. So what I want to talk about today are snapshots. This is what Eventide call hot switches, and it's the ability to have 3 different snapshots of a program at your beck and call immediately, and it's incredibly powerful, and I don't think enough is made of it either on YouTube or in the manual itself. So to set up a snapshot, you press the parameters button and then you hold one of the 3 lights here, P, A or B. You have 3 snapshots per program. So if I hold the P button down here, and what this does, apart from changing the colors to blue, is that it gives you access to 3 parameters on each page, and if you look at the line here under the word filter pong, there are 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of parameters, and we are currently on the B parameter, the filter pong. If you want to get to the parameters on the A program, you just press the button again. That takes you to, it takes you to P. So there are 3 different levels that you can allocate. So on the program level, there are 2 pages of parameters, and on A and on B, there are 5 pages. So we have 15, 30, 35 different parameters that we can change. Okay, you may know this already. So what does it mean? So what a snapshot means is that you can take any number of those 35 different parameters and change them and tweak them to your heart's content and allocate them to a single switch. So by pressing one single switch, 35 different parameters can change, just like that. So let's give it a go. So on the first one, I want to be quite subtle. I want to be quite close, probably, to the existing parameters. So if I do the program mix level, maybe I'll even take it down slightly. Maybe I'll take the gain up a touch because we're being a bit more subtle on the mix. If we then go to the next page, if we go to the parameters on the A algorithm or the A effect, you press this and it is the crystals. And so to map a parameter to a hot switch, we're currently on hot switch on the left here, the one that is lit red. So if I press that button in, it's on mix 100. So the crystal's on mix 100. So maybe I'll just dial that down a touch. Maybe I will change the pitch mix of the crystals very slightly. And let's see what else we can do. We can change. I want this to be quite subtle. So the verb mix, maybe we'll up that slightly. And then if we go to the parameters on the filter, the wet mix is at 50, so maybe we'll take it down a little bit. The delay mix, maybe we'll change that a bit. And to exit this menu, you press the perform button. Okay, so what does that mean? So at the moment we are on, we're still on the parameters page, so if I just press one of these 3 buttons, we get out to our standard. So this is the standard program that I have created. Bypassed and on. Again, quite subtle. So to access your hot switches, you first press the perform button and it takes you to this screen. So on this screen, where it says active, that is telling you what each of these foot switches is currently allocated to. So at the moment, all it does is turn things on and off, from bypass to active. So if I want to select the hot switch I've created, if I press the light here, it scrolls through. That's insert 1 active, insert 2 active, hot switch 1, which is what I want, which is the one that I've created over here, off. But then if I press it, you'll notice that the sound changes. Now this one is slightly more subdued. So this is maybe something you want on the intro, then you go into the standard one on the verse. The power of this is that you can create 3 versions of your own program and very quickly turn them on and off during a recording or during a performance. So if I then go on and allocate some different snapshots to hot switch 2 and hot switch 3, and I will already go and select these on the buttons so that we are ready, then you'll be able to see the power of this function. So let's choose our settings for hot switch 2. So remember, we press parameters, and then we hold this one of these buttons till it turns a different color, which is now a different color. So if we go with P to start with, we want the mix to be full on. And we do want the gain, I think, to be slightly higher, so it's a slightly stronger effect. In terms of the crystals, again, we can scroll through each. We've got 100% mix, which is, right, we'll change the pitch of the crystals on this one. And we will actually leave the pitch exactly where it was. Reverse delay. So we're going to pretty much change everything on this one. A bit more. So this, I'm going to, for the hot switch 2, I'm going to make it more extreme on the crystals algorithm rather than algorithm B. Let's so that we can really see the difference. But I think we do want a little bit more. So if I'm still allocating things to switch 2, it says at the top hot switch 2 if you ever get lost where you are. We'll get the mix up a bit more, we'll change the and we will leave the rest as it is. Okay, so this is us back into our standard setting. So this is our standard setting. So then if we can now see what hot switch 1 and hot switch 2 sound like. You press the perform button. That's hot switch 1, which is almost the dry signal but slightly more subtle. You can only have one hot switch or snapshot at a time. So if I press this one, it'll immediately switch from our first snapshot to our second one. I think actually that sounds very nice indeed. So you can see that you might be in a intro or a verse, you then go into maybe a chorus or a breakdown, and then we'll see how extreme we can make hot switch 3 sound. I've deliberately chosen a program here which I think sounds good, so it's not supposed to sound completely crazy. You can go as crazy as you want, but I like to try and use things which I might actually use in my own music production. Go back to parameters, hold down B, and now we are editing hot switch B. And we will start again with mix, and we will make sure that the mix for the program is at 100%. And this time we will boost things slightly on the way in before the effects hit. And on A, we will go to... No, I think those are all fine. Those are all fine as well. So if you select one, you can see what the standard setting is. And you can then change it. If you don't like it, you just unmap it and it won't make any allocation. So I think here we're going to up things to make it kind of washy and right, this is the filter. Again, let's have more. Let's maybe change the delay. Timing. And this is A, so if we change this as well, we get more. Delay B. Don't really want triplets, so much higher feedback. Mod shape sign I think is fine. Mod depth, let's have them bigger. Okay, so it's now starting to sound slightly more crazy now. Okay, we'll leave it like that. We are now back. Totally dry signal. My standard program. Quite subtle. Then if we go perform, we get into this menu. Hot switch 1, off, 2 off, 3 off. So we have our sort of intro, maybe even slightly more subtle version. There's a slight echo and verb in the background, but you might need headphones to notice. Then the second one is a slightly more extreme. Really quite nice, I think. And then let's see how crazy we made our third version. Okay, quite nice, apart from the excessively quick modulation on the filter. So maybe we'll just go and change that, because that takes away from what is quite a nice effect. So if we go parameters, hold B, and then go to the modulation, maybe speed and depth, something like that I think sounds better. Okay, so as soon as we get out of perform mode, we're back to our standard. So we then press perform, we get to this screen, hot switch 3. So that's it, a short video today, but a very powerful one. So you can create your own programs on the H90, and then you can create 3 instances that you are really keen, and very quickly go from a subtle version, probably too subtle, but subtle to prove a point, into our slightly more extreme version of a sort of standard program, to our slightly more dreamy breakdown version, which I think is actually really nice. If you want to go back to our standard version, we just turn this off. All hot switches are off. We're back to our standard. We can press select, and we're back, and we can then scroll through all of our various programs that we've created.
So I hope you've seen the power of Snapshots today. We've created a program, we've messed around with it, we've got 3 different functions, and hopefully it takes you away from just being a beginner scratching the surface and only using the factory presets. So if that sounds good, I'll see you in the next video.
I was so excited when my H90 arrived that I couldn't wait to get it out of the box and plugged in. But then it was so difficult to understand, and the 200-page manual so overwhelming that I couldn't get it to sound how I wanted it to, how I had imagined it would. And now it's sat here on my desk, and I'm wondering if I made a mistake buying it in the first place. I don't know about you, but I get so excited doing the research on a new bit of gear, watching all the YouTube videos and imagining what I could do with it. Then when it actually arrives, I'm sometimes even reluctant to dive straight in and start playing with it. I know that sounds strange, but I know it's going to take an investment of time and energy to get to know it. And that scares me. Even though I have this fantastic new product on my desk, even though I really wanted and lusted after it for months, I often procrastinate about actually sitting down with it. It's like having a 500-piece jigsaw emptied out in front of you. You just don't know where to start. Do you start with the edges? Do you start with the middle? Do you do with the colours? I always start with the edges, by the way. And even starting is so daunting that you don't even bother. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you the 7 essential settings that you need to know on the H90 to get started quickly, to start loving your new purchase and avoid buyer's remorse. So let's get into it. The biggest hurdle I had when I first switched on the H90 was how to set up my own FX chain. When you first turn the machine on, it takes you to preset or program 1, and you can hear how great the pedal sounds straight away. Fantastic. But how can I initialize this patch and start creating something of my own? Any ideas? Which of these hundreds of buttons on the front actually does that? Well, it's very difficult to find out. I found that extremely annoying. I mean, is it just me, or is it completely ridiculous that getting to initialize patch is not obvious? This kind of thing really puts me off hardware. I have to go diving into the manual straight away just to get started, so I'm definitely not loving the H90 at this point. Okay, so when you first turn on the H90, this is how it looks. You're in user list 1, even though it doesn't tell you that, and you're on program 1, clean ambient. But it's impossible to get out of this. Like, okay, not impossible. You can't initialize this patch. You can edit this patch and you can tweak it and you can go to some of the other presets, but you can't actually initialize the patch. And they've set it up so you can't actually delete or remove any of the factory settings. So to actually start creating, it's really frustrating. What you actually need to do is go into the system menu. So you press these 2 buttons, and you hold it, and you get to, well, actually, you originally will get to this screen. You go into global, and here on the left it says playlist user 1. User 1 is actually the factory presets, so I don't know why it's not just called that, because you can't delete it or amend it. So if you go to user list 2, then get out, sorry, you press perform to get out, and you get to user list 2, and this is another set of 99. And what I've done is I've left that the 01 preset has the initialize, so now this is totally clean, and there are no presets, there are no programs here. And if you scroll through, I have actually then created some presets of my own, and if we get up to about 9 or 10, we then start to get to more initialized patch. So they are all blank for you to start afresh. Now, what I would recommend is to set the H90 to load up like this, so it goes straight to your user list, where I would also recommend having the very first one as always being an initialized patch. So you can always start with a blank slate. You can always go back to the factory presets, but start building your own effects as soon as possible. I had a question in the comments on one of my previous videos on the H90 asking whether it was worth buying it, or why not just buy two separate pedals instead of this combination pedal. Well, if you're not using this function, then buying the H90 is a total waste of money. At the touch of a button, you can completely rewire your FX chain. If you've ever had a pedal board set up, then this function is totally amazing. You can go through all the different routings and change the order of the effects. You can even put them in parallel, so the input sound goes through each effect separately. Routing is the key to getting the most out of the H90, and if you combine this with another external FX pedal, as I did here in this video, then you have the power to bend sound right at your fingertips. Put it this way, if you're cooking a meal at home and you have all the ingredients you need, but they are scattered around your house in different rooms, it's going to be a real pain making dinner. Well, the H90 is like having your own sous chef who has weighed everything out, chopped all the vegetables and put them right here in front of you ready to cook. It makes things that easy. Depending on the effect I'm going for, I love being able to switch between having my effects tempo synced and run totally out of sync and let them kind of come in and out of time with the music. Now, fortunately, the H90 allows you to do this very easily. By pressing these two buttons on the right-hand side, you switch between tempo sync and milliseconds as your timing criteria. Now, just remember to ensure that you have told the H90 where to get its tempo information from. This can be found in the global menu, and the way I have mine set up, I have it coming in through the USB straight from Ableton. Now, when I'm coming up with effects, I like to try and create a few varieties of each effect to try in any track. So maybe they work in different parts of the track, or maybe I'm just trying to find the right effect to work for this track. So if it's a simple delay into reverb, then I like to create 3 different types of delay into reverb. Now, the H90 has a perfect setting for me, and I would encourage you to also start thinking in 3s. After all, the best things in life come in 3s. The Godfather trilogy, the Star Wars trilogy, the original one at least, breakfast, lunch and dinner. But trust me, you want to start thinking in 3s. Now, if you hold down the left-hand select button, you go into bank mode. All this does is group your user list of 99 programs into sets of 3 and allows you to switch seamlessly between them quickly and easily. So what I like to do is set 3 kind of similar effects. And then when you're in bank mode, you can switch between them just by pressing these buttons. And if you have the tail switched on, then they kind of seamlessly sort of merge into each other, which is really nice. So here we have a harmonizer going into a reverb, and then we have a delay going into reverb, and then crystals going into reverb. Now, any tech gadget that has too much jargon or invents its own terminology is, for me, an immediate red flag. Consider gaming PCs, which market themselves with terms like memory bandwidth, ray tracing cores, and texture rates. Now, I know nothing about gaming, but I'm sure the geeks absolutely love that. And no disrespect to them, I'm basically jealous of them. But the average consumer has no idea what these terms mean. Well, the H90 has fallen into this trap too, with quick knobs, hot switches, hot knobs, programs, presets, and parameters. I mean, it really is unbelievably confusing, and it just doesn't need to be. Now, it doesn't matter what these things are called, but these 3 small black knobs on the front of the unit are your best friend. Eventide call them quick knobs. If you press and hold any of them first, you get a list of parameters that can be assigned to each knob. There are 2 pages of parameters, so with 3 knobs, we have 6 parameters that you can map and get access to for every single program quickly and easily. So I usually have 3 parameters relating to effect A and 3 parameters relating to effect B. Then I can play with them live, tweak them, and get something that really works, even if it's a preset that I've already used or my own program. Depending what I'm using at that particular time, these 3 knobs let you dial in things extremely quickly without menu diving. They're great. So what's not very obvious from the manual or from playing with it is that these lights are actually buttons as well. And they can very quickly, if you're doing something which, like maybe a YouTube video, and you don't like the clicky nature of the buttons, which do make a reasonable sound, you can just press the button, which is almost soundless. So that one then turns the effect off and on. So this has the effect on it, and that's the totally dry signal. If you press the middle button, it'll first tell you what preset you're using. So we're using the arpeggiator algorithm, and we are using boiling solo as the preset. And if you then press it again, it'll then bypass the first effect. And the same with B. So we are using the hot SW freeze and the dual verb. If I press it again, we're basically totally dry signal. And these are also come into effect when you're using some of the perform functions such as snapshots, which we'll get onto in the next point. The final essential setting is snapshots. It's such a superpower that I've done a whole video on it, which you can see here. Now imagine being able to switch seamlessly between 3 totally different snapshots of any FX chain on the H90. To go from maybe a subtle effect to then a stronger version and then a totally extreme version just at the touch of a button. It'd be like having 3 versions of your favorite meal and being able to taste a different version with each forkful. Well, the H90 lets you do just that. Now, as with most things on this sneaky little box, it's not straightforward, and I would strongly encourage you to watch the whole video. But as a quick example, it is worth learning about how to really take control of snapshots. Now, I've done a whole video on this, which you can see. I'll link in the description below. But this is a way of taking a preset, such as this one, and creating 3 different versions of that preset, which you can then access out at the touch of a button. So let me show you what I mean. So if I turn the simple loop on, so this is the normal standard effect. If we go into perform mode, you can get it set up so it has hot switch 1, 2 and 3 on and off, and at the moment they're all off. I've set up hot switch 1 to be a different set of parameters. So hot switch 1 is much less of the twinkly arpeggiator effect and much more reverb. So now you know how to get started on the H90. You know the 7 essential settings to help you really start to enjoy your new purchase. Once I'd got the hang of these, I really started to love the H90. Out of all of my tips, setting up the snapshots is the most complicated, and I would strongly encourage you to view my separate video on that subject. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. I've been exploring the Eventide H90 now for several weeks, but it wasn't until the last few days that I downloaded the companion app for Mac. Now, why did it take me so long? Well, I bought a piece of hardware with buttons and knobs on it, and it's that interface that I want to use. If I'm going to be sat in front of my computer, then I may as well use just a plug-in or even let AI make my music. But what I found is that while the H90 is fantastic and a very powerful FX pedal, it's also very deep. And when I say deep, I mean unbelievably complicated. It's like one of those early computers that filled a whole room but had like 3 buttons to control it. Well, the app lets you quickly and easily set the H90 up how you want it to be set up. Then you can return to the hardware unit and use it to perform and play. And that's what I love doing. But that is the beauty of the app. But if that's all the app did, then it would be okay, but not great. Now in this video, I'll show you how to use the app, yes, of course. But I'll also show you how to use the app to truly unlock the monster that is the H90. And if you stick around until the end, I have a bonus tip that takes this thing to a whole new level. And if that sounds good, then please consider subscribing to my channel and giving me a thumbs up. Apparently, it helps the algorithm. Right, let's get into it.
So I'm going to attempt to show you around the app. When you open it up, this is what the app looks like. We are on the first program, Clean Ambient. It's currently bypassed and in the user one factory list. So if I just start that loop, and we are on Clean Ambient. It says Clean Ambient. This is the first program that loads up. If I click here on bypass, we can hear the sound, and these are all the factory presets, and you can just scroll through them. Literally click on one, it goes straight to it. I'm not touching the hardware box at all. So straight away you can see this is quite handy just for very quickly seeing what some of these sound like. All I'm doing is literally clicking on okay. So I'll stop that. So you can see this is the user list 199 split into banks of 3. If you haven't seen my other videos, I explain what banks are and what programs are, and I thoroughly recommend going through my videos and learning the hardware first before you get into this software app, but this is unbelievably helpful. So you can then, in this drop down menu, go to user bank 2, which is also what I recommend doing, and this is some of the programs that I have set up on some of my previous videos, but if you scroll down you can also see that we've got init patches here, and every time you click on one of these this screen here changes. And what's also quite useful, which I didn't know how to do on the hardware, is that you can rename this. So if you go to this button here, user list 2, I can change this to JK list 1, which is pretty handy. And then that will show up on the box. So already something that this can do, which is pretty hard to do on the unit itself. And so if we just go through, if I go through one of the factory presets to start with, because everyone watching this who has an H90 will have one of these. If we go to Warm Embrace, so this is a chorus here called Polymodalicious, going into Headspace, a reverb. So let's just hear what it sounds like. Nice. So the way the app works is pretty much like the pedal. You have an A effect on the left hand side, this kind of yellowy green color. You have a B effect on the right hand side, and each of these dials is a parameter that you can change, and they are split on each side into the effect parameter, so things like intensity, type, depth. This is chorus, so we've got speed, shape, delay, etc, etc. Then we have a general, which again is available on all of them, which are things like the tail, what's the tempo mode, input and output gain, etc. And the same on the B effect, so over here. You don't have to, you have access to them all on one screen, which is what I really like. You can bypass each of them individually, so clicking on this button here bypasses A, clicking on this here bypasses B, clicking on this tempo changes the tempo mode from tempo linked to not tempo linked or free running. You can bypass the whole thing, you can favorite it just by clicking on here. All of this stuff is really good, and this, if you look on the bottom section here, we have 4 pages. This is the parameters page, so this is where you get to tweak everything that you want in this particular effect. So if we go back to the effects page and I start it again, take off the bypass, we can, for example, reduce the chorus potentially and increase the reverb. It's very easy just to change these. I think it's much easier just to mess around with this stuff on the app. When we have a different effect, which we may or may not like, then we can save it over here. We can also very quickly swap them around. So this button here swaps the presets, so now we have a reverb going into the chorus, and swap it back again. We could do all the good stuff that we can do on the pedal as well. So if we click down to the second page here, we have the routing, and we have another lovely image. So we have parallel here. We can change it to series. We can play with inserts here if we have any inserts, which I don't at the moment. The third page is the control assignments. So we just choose a different preset here. We're on Thieves, ring mod going into distortion, which sounds quite nice. I'll just turn that off for a second. So the routing, this is in series, and if we go to page 3, the control assignments. So the quick knobs, now these are the 3 black knobs on the face of the H90, and this is where using the app to get something quick is really helpful. So there are 3 knobs, but there are 2 pages, so you have 6 parameters, and this is what the factory presets have come as. And I found this quite awkward to set up on the box itself, so being able to do it here, so it's set to intensity, you can see it's ticked. You can obviously choose the program level effect, preset A or preset B, and as per my previous videos I like to have 3 on A and 3 on B, so we could change that from intensity to pitch, and then we could change that from type to depth, and it's just very, very quick to change these. So what if we wanted to set up our own preset? First thing to do is to go to an init patch. So if I go over to my list, which I've just renamed, go to init program and go to page 4. Let's just check on the parameters. We have 2 completely blank patches here, both on A and B. If we go to the preset library, we can then very quickly choose what we want. So on the right hand side here, you've got the effect type, and you've got all the very helpful images and all the lists. So if I click one, you can see that the algorithms then only show me the delay algorithms. So if I want a clean delay, let's say a digital delay, comes even smaller. Then here is all of the digital delays. So it's very quick to, you can do this on the unit, and I have shown this in a previous video, but it's very quick to dial in something very specific. So if we choose one of them, that then immediately goes into A. If I go back to the parameters page, I have all the parameters here, and if I play my clip, we can then see what it sounds like immediately. And we might decide that we want a bit more feedback. We might decide we want a filter here. We might decide we want this to be a bit louder so we can hear the echoes a bit more. We can bypass it. Okay, so that sounds quite nice. We'll just stop that for a second and then choose something for B. So if we click over here on B, we can then choose something different, maybe some sort of modulation, sort of flanger type sound. So we've got modulation, flanger, and we have our list here. And again, I can play the clip and we can select things live and see what they sound like. So if I go for barrel roll, pulsing wow flange, subtle address stick. Okay, I quite like that. When we go back to the presets, you can see the intense. We can bypass A. Here's flanger on its own. Clean. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. Alright, let's say, well, the final thing probably to do is just to check the routing, see which sounds better. So we've got it in series. We can swap it around by pressing this button up here. I think it actually sounds better that way around, having the flanger being then affected by the delay. What about parallel? No, again, better in series. Okay, so we like this, so we can then rename this. We've got flange delay, haven't we? So what about... Ooh. And save. Once we've saved it, you can see it's here. It's in bank 6. program 16 or slot 16 of my list, JK list 1. Okay, so now you know the basics. Let me show you the first thing that blew my mind when I first started playing with the H90 app. So if you've seen some of my previous videos, you know that I love snapshots. Now, Eventide calls these hot switches, but they're an incredibly powerful way of taking one set of algorithms, or 2 presets, 1 program, sorry, the crazy nomenclature, something you've set up, an FX that you like, taking that and creating 3 different versions of it, and it being able to switch between the 3 incredibly easily for use in different parts of the same song, which is generally how I like to use them. Well, if you look down here in the bottom right hand corner of the app, hello, you see HS1, 2 and 3, hot switch 1, 2 and 3. And yes, if you click on one of them, so when you've clicked hot switch 1, what you can do is select any single one of these parameters and attach it to hot switch 1 and then set the level. So maybe if we're going for 3 different versions, we will click on this little plus button here. It says add hot switch mapping, and we'll do that. And so maybe on hot switch 1 we won't have 99 intensity, we'll dial it back to something like 30. And well, let's concentrate on the flanger. Let's add the speed, and we'll have a quick, oh wait, that's going slower. We'll have a quick, and we will have, let's just throw quite a few of these on. Speed will go low, depth we will go low as well. Okay, so we have 4 of these settings on hot switch 1. And now if I go to hot switch 2, you see they disappear, but if I add the same 4, and then we were on about 30, we'll have 60 here, we'll have 10, 16 here, and we'll have 50, and we'll have quick. And then if I can switch between hot switch 1 and hot switch 2, you'll see the little pointers and the numbers change. So we've got the same speed, but the intensity goes up, and we've got the speed and depth and modulation going up. At the moment I haven't touched the second effect B, that's deliberately. So maybe on hot switch 3 we will then go and have 99 intensity. We will slow that down, we will go to 99 modulation, and we will go very quick, and maybe we will add some other shapes here as well. Okay, so now we have 3. If you click between them, you can see the different settings very, very quickly. Then if I play the clip, so we are in hot switch 1 here. Okay, so this isn't the standard setting, this is hot switch 1. And then hot switch 2, slightly more. And then you can do the same, obviously, with effect B. So we can increase the feedback. We can increase the feedback. We can change the filter. We can change the spread, and we could maybe even reduce the output on hot switch 1, but then on hot switch 2 we will increase the output gain. So we'll go from hot switch 1, which sounds like this, to hot switch 2, and then hot switch 3. I think this is fantastic. It's so much easier and so nice visually just to be able to see what's going on. Changing it live. just really very quickly and easily dial in and switch between these 3 presets, and I think this is fantastic. And then you can, of course, then save that, and all of these hot switches and settings are saved, and they are immediately on the hardware. And I promised you a bonus tip, and here it is. Now, the H90 has another stupidly named feature called hot knobs. Yes, not quick knobs and not hot switches, hot knobs. And with everything else going on with the unit, I've not really used it, to be honest. It's more of a performance thing, and it's a bit fiddly to set up. The button on the top right of the hardware unit can be used to change a number of parameters very quickly in performance mode. Now, with the app, it's an absolute breeze to set this up, and I will show you how right now. Now, the thing that really takes us to the next level is adding an expression pedal, and that is a guitar pedal that you can control with your foot. So when you're playing with all the other things and knobs and switches on the actual unit in front of you, you have effectively something else that you can play with. These are not very expensive, and I haven't really used one until now, but with the H90 I was encouraged to explore this, and I'll show you exactly what I mean now. So if you look at the app, this switch here is called Hot Knobs, and the little yellow drop down here, if you connect it, says Control Source for Range Mapping Hot Knob. And if you go to Expression Pedal, this is, as I said, just a normal sort of guitar pedal, and it is plugged into the back of the unit, pedal number 1. So that is it, and it is underneath the desk right now, and if I start moving it with my foot, you can see, I'm not sure why I can't get it up to 100, but it should go from, yeah, okay, so from 2 to 92. So I am basically controlling this hands-free with my foot. And then I can take some of these settings. So for example, mix being the obvious one. So if I click on again on that, and I can Control Source for Range Mapping Mix. If I go Program Hot Knob, that is this button here. So you'll see as I move my foot, this goes up and this goes up, and I've also set mix here going up. So I can go from completely dry, which will sound like this, and if I slowly start pressing, hands free here, if I start pressing with my foot, both mixes go up, and this all the way up to max. Now that is very cool, and something that you can obviously do on the unit, but if you're playing with lots of other parameters at the same time, potentially playing with the hot switches here and playing with lots of other things, it's useful to have another pair of hands, or in this case, another foot. And what you can also do, of course, is, well, you can add other things in. So let's add, say, feedback to the program hot knob. And you'll see I'll go from 0 to 1. Now, I do not want feedback to go totally crazy. So if you get the ends of the, you can restrict the range. So maybe we only want to go to 50%. And again, maybe I don't want it to be completely off on the mix. I want to go from maybe 12 to 80. And the shimmer, again, maybe I always want a little bit of shimmer. And maybe we'll add a few more. So we'll have a decay. We can add the program hot knob on that. And we want to take it from something like that. What else? Maybe that is enough. So we're at 1, we're at 13, we're at 20, we're here, and that would sound like, maybe should we try a different loop so that we don't have the same one? What does this one sound like? Okay. Actually, that's not quite bypassed, so that's the effect bypassed. That is the program turned on, and then if I slowly start to increase, you'll see here the hot knob. We've got more feedback, more mix, more decay here, all the way up to the max. I think that sounds great. And you can, because it's you can literally just kind of pump the effect in, which you probably don't want to do, but you can certainly very quickly dial in different amounts. Fantastic.
Now, there are very few pieces of music production gear that manage to combine software and hardware to create something better than before.
Now, the Electron boxes work brilliantly with Overbridge, and that's for a whole new video, but there aren't too many other examples. Well, I think Eventide have done a great job with their H90 software, perhaps realizing that it really does need a companion app to unlock all its secrets quickly and easily. Now, I can't actually recommend this highly enough. Without it, you have a box of treasure which looks great and is full of potential, but with it, you have the key to unlocking the creative monster that is the H90. Now, if you haven't checked out my other videos on the H90, please do check them out, because I have a whole series taking you from absolute beginner through to expert. And that's it for now. I'll see you in the next video.